On June 18, 2015, an incident transpired in Washington State's remote Aeneas Valley that left 51-year-old Deborah Long dead, and James and Angela Faire facing a litany of charges including assault, theft, criminal trespass, and first-degree murder. It's a wild story, but wilder still, there is compelling evidence that James and Angela Faire are completely innocent. In February 2015, James Faire and Angela Nobilis Faire moved into their friend Michelle St. Pierre's Stanwood, Washington home to care for her as she lay dying of cancer. The Faires cooked and cleaned for the whole household, including Michelle's socially inept boyfriend Richard Feingold, her former heroin addict brother Michael St. Pierre, and an emotionally disturbed roommate named George Abrantes, none of whom were much help in caring for Michelle. Soon, Angela started a GoFundMe campaign to help Michelle. The fundraiser raised just over $9,000, $6,000 of which went directly to Feingold and Michelle, while the rest was used for groceries, gas, and other expenses around the house. While the Faires were living in Stanwood, Michelle and Feingold invited them to be part of a planned community they hoped to create on a ranch Feingold owned on Sourdough Road outside of Tonasket, a remote town 5 hours drive east in the Aeneas Valley. Feingold gave the Faires permission to store their belongings at the Sourdough Ranch, and requested that James make repairs to the house on the property. On several occasions, he even sent them to Tonasket to retrieve things from the property and check that everything there was in good order. Deborah Long, aka Deborah James, Deborah Lynn, Deborah Stewart, and Deborah Emery, first entered Michelle's life to help her with a property foreclosure. Long claimed to have both a PhD and her own law firm, neither of which are true. Nevertheless, like some kind of con woman, Long immediately began taking control of Michelle's life and belongings and using lies and deception to alienate the dying woman from anyone who stood in her way. She convinced Michelle to sign away the 2 properties that she owned and put them in the control of a trust. Deborah pitched the trust idea as a way to save the properties from foreclosure, but in actuality she was merely putting them in the control of one Michael Fritsch, her boyfriend from Loomis, California, a man with a well-documented history of perpetrating real estate scams. On April 13, 2015, Deborah Long was able to convince Michelle to grant her power of attorney. In direct contradiction of standard POA language, the POA Deborah wrote explicitly relieves her of all fiduciary responsibility and all accountability. It allowed Deborah to sign any document as if she were Michelle. She could give away Michelle's personal property to anyone as she saw fit: cash, accounts, belongings, property. Slowly but surely, Deborah was taking control of everything in Michelle's life. The only thing left for Deborah to do now was secure control of the Sourdough Ranch property that Richard Feingold had bought for Michelle. With Richard likely falling somewhere on the autism spectrum and being largely unable to care for himself domestically, he could be easy to push around. Deborah's plan was falling into place. The only remaining roadblocks were James and Angela Faire. According to witnesses, when James and Angela weren't present, Long would badmouth them and slight their integrity. She created such a hostile environment that James and Angela had to leave the home, moving to Lake Stevens, Washington instead. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before Michelle lost her fight with cancer. That was when James and Angela's problems truly began. On June 15th, the very day of Michelle's death, Long met with James and Angela for a prearranged dinner at the Ram restaurant in Marysville. At this point, James and Angela did not know that Michelle had passed away, so they asked how she was doing. Long replied, "She's a feisty little bird," and went on to say that she was fine despite having been present that very morning when Michelle had passed away. The Faires then informed Long that they were no longer interested in participating in the planned community at the Sourdough Ranch, and that they would soon be retrieving some belongings they had stored at the ranch with Michelle's permission. According to the Faires, the meeting was pleasant and not in any way confrontational. Long even went so far as to hug them when they parted. But behind the scenes, Long was railing against the Faires and trying to turn people against them with the demonstrably false claim that they had stolen money from the GoFundMe account. 3 days later, on June 18, 2015, the Faires set out on the long journey to Tonasket to retrieve their belongings from the Sourdough Ranch. Following them was 60-year-old Boyd McPherson, a neighbor they had hired to drive a second vehicle and help them load up their belongings. Unbeknownst to James and Angela Faire, though, on June 17, 2015, Deborah Long had Richard Feingold call the police and make a false report of a break-in at the Sourdough Ranch.
Okanagan 911.
Yes, hi there. I'd like to report a break-in.
A break-in?
Yeah, a break-in. It looks like someone was trying to squat in my house.
Feingold's claims that the Faires were wrongly squatting on the property flies in the face of all evidence, including a September 2014 email Michelle St. Pierre had sent to James and Angela that read, "Dear Angela and James, thanks so much for watching out for our property. Love you so much and miss you terribly, and the Sourdough property as well." In the email, Michelle also talks about Feingold making plans to visit the property. She wrote, "Don't know if you can hook up, but I know Richard would love to see you." In another email dated November 15, 2014, Michelle had told James and Angela that, "I know you don't have an oven, so if you want to stage Thanksgiving at the Sourdough property, that would be fine. I don't know if we'll make it over there, but we might, especially if you are cooking." Then, at the end of the email, she stated, "If you need to stage any stuff at our property prior to your move, feel free." There is no doubt that Feingold was well aware of this arrangement. As the Faires journeyed to Tonasket on that fateful June 18th, they messaged local Aeneas Valley residents Jody and Linda Priest in the hopes that they could drop off several large solar batteries that belonged to the Faires at the Sourdough Ranch, so that the Faires wouldn't have to make an extra trip to get them later. They kept Jody and Linda updated about their estimated time of arrival along the way, and about half an hour prior to the Faires' arrival, Jody Priest swung by the Sourdough Ranch to drop off the batteries. While there, he innocently let everyone know when James and Angela would arrive, unaware that the group was conspiring to ambush and frame the Faires for squatting. At approximately 1:30, James and Angela pulled into the driveway at the Sourdough Ranch. Upon exiting their vehicle and walking towards the house, they were accosted by 4 individuals, George Abrantes, Ruth Brooks, Michael St. Pierre, and Deborah Long. What happened next occurred in a span of seconds. Chaos erupted as George Abrantes came at the Faires swinging a chain. People were screaming. Not initially recognizing their ambushers, James drew the firearm that he always legally carried to hold off their assailant as he and Angela retreated back to their truck. Once the Faires were in the truck, Abrantes began smashing the hood and working his way to the driver's side window, which held against several blows. Michael St. Pierre was at Angela's window screaming and pounding. James started the truck and did his best to escape the onslaught and navigate their way to safety where they could find cell service and call 911. After calling the police, James and Angela waited for them to arrive. When officers finally did show up, the Faires were arrested and informed that Deborah Long had been killed. Unbeknownst to James and Angela, their vehicle had struck Long during their panicked escape. They don't even remember seeing Long at all after they'd gotten into their truck. Boyd McPherson, however, had watched the whole thing unfold, and his testimony constitutes the only truly unbiased account of the incident. According to McPherson, Long was bent down in front of the truck, attempting to tie herself to the front of it. In his deposition, McPherson described Abrantes' attack as completely unwarranted and stated in no uncertain terms that James and Angela are innocent of any wrongdoing. According to Boyd McPherson, the death of Deborah Long was clearly just an unfortunate accident. Since the Faires were arrested, the murder and assault charges initially leveled against Angela have been dropped, and she is now free from jail after posting bail on the remaining charges of first-degree criminal trespass and first-degree theft. It's been a different story for James, though. Despite Boyd McPherson's compelling testimony that the Faires are innocent, Okanagan County Prosecutor Carl Sloan has continued to press charges as severe as first-degree murder, relying solely on the claims of his brother, Detective Craig Sloan, and the eyewitness testimonies of people who have every reason to lie. Unlike the defense, the prosecutors have no unbiased witnesses backing them up. Richard Feingold's testimony has changed significantly over time, and there are large inconsistencies in the stories of the conspirators. George Abrantes, for example, claims that he only started swinging a chain at the Faires when James pulled a gun on him.
He pulls up, I come out, and he pulls a gun on me. And I said, look man, I will defend myself, I'm not going to start a fight.
How did you try to stop him?
I had a lock on a chain. I was trying to smash the driver's side window so I could pull him off the wheel.
But according to Ruth Brooks, George started swinging first, prompting James to draw his gun defensively.
All I saw was he was banging the chain on the window.
Even with all these problems in the prosecution's story, from the very beginning, the sheriff's department has seemingly had their minds made up. Sheriff Frank Rogers even went so far as to publicly condemn the Faires on the very day of the incident in this alarmingly misleading news report.
Now, I'll tell you now, if I went on vacation, came home, and somebody was living in my house, we're going to have a problem. And so I don't know what was going through their brains, what they thought they were going to do, and then, the crazy thing is to push it or escalate it this far, where somebody has to die, and then our other victims over in Sacred Heart pretty busted up. There's just no sense in it.
Clearly, it would seem that law enforcement in Okanagan County is some combination of incompetent and corrupt. While Sheriff Rogers' initial statements on TV and Detective Craig Sloan's assumption of the Faire's guilt may well be honest if incompetent mistakes, the continued prosecution of James and Angela Faire in the face of overwhelming evidence that they are innocent is absolutely inexcusable. The real criminals here, Georgia Brontes, Ruth Brooks, Richard Feingold, and Michael St. Pierre, continue to walk free and have faced zero repercussions for their role in the many crimes they took part in. Unfortunately, given the behavior of Okanagan County, this doesn't seem likely to change anytime soon. Whether he's simply incompetent or he wants to stick to his brother's story no matter where the evidence points him, Prosecutor Sloan should be ashamed of himself for his continued prosecution of innocent people. And the people of Okanagan County should be appalled at the behavior of those ostensibly tasked with upholding justice in their county. To learn more about James and Angela Faire's wrongful prosecution and find out what you can do to help them, visit the U.S. Observer, fairfoundation.org, and facebook.com/fairfoundation. And don't forget to share James and Angela's story and the stories of others like them, because by spreading the truth, we can all work towards our goal of protecting and vindicating the innocent.